If you do any prospecting with LinkedIn, you have got to go get set up with Surf. That's SURFE. It's a tool you can use to add new contacts to your CRM system directly from LinkedIn in seconds. I'm using it every single day. I add contacts, follow my deals, keep track of notes, and it ends up saving me a bunch of time on prospecting and outreach, which means I can spend more time moving my deals along. The data is always 100% accurate since I don't have to copy and paste all the fields over from each and every contact that I want to put in my CRM. Instead, Surf does that all automatically with just one click in about 60 seconds. The team over at Surf has put together a very special offer for fans of sales players. There's a link down in the show notes, and you can use the promo code JWSurf5. Don't forget the E at the end of Surf. That's JWSurf5 for 5% off your first year. Don't spend another minute doing things manually. Go get set up with Surf. I'm going to let you in on a secret weapon that's going to skyrocket your sales without the unnecessary headaches that come with using one of the big player CRM systems. And that secret weapon is Close CRM. Let's face it, we've all used a clunky, confusing CRM platform, the one that kind of makes you want to throw your laptop out the window. Well, Close is going to save you time, money, and sanity. Close has all the powerful tools you need to manage your leads, track your deals, and crush your targets. It has built-in calling, emailing, SMS, multi-channel sequences, and meeting tracking. It's super easy to implement, and it's built for your business. You can stop screwing around with CRMs that aren't built for you and start selling and managing your customers today. Use the link in the show notes and enter the promo code SSP15. That's SSP15 for 15% off your first 3 months. Go check them out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got yet another fantastic guest lined up for today's episode. With me today is Nate Nasralla. Nate is the co-founder of Fluint, that's fluint.io. And he's someone who I'm super excited to have come across his content and his company. And we'll get more into that in the episode, but we talk about a few different things that I think are super important for sellers today. First, that's how Nate came up with the idea for Fluint, what the pain point was that led him to create this company. We talk about something called Buyer Enablement. Now, if you haven't already heard that term, the idea behind it in a nutshell is enabling your champions, the folks that work at the companies you're selling to be able to go in and sell better than you in many cases to their executives or their leadership teams, because the belief is that a lot of your biggest deals that you're going to close in your career don't happen or don't close while you're in the room. They happen in internal meetings. So Nate goes into very great detail on some ways that you can simplify your communication with your champions and your buyers, how you can enable them to present, and how you can help them succeed in that endeavor. We also talk about his 10 tips for improving your writing as a seller. This was a big one for me. It's one of those skills that I think is super underrated in selling. And it's one of those superpowers that I've seen play out for some of the top reps that I've worked with are the ones that tend to know how to craft great written word that can get their point across, that can create a point of view, and ultimately help sell those deals. There is a lot of value in this episode, so you'll want to listen to the very end. So with all of that said, welcome Nate to the SaaS Sales Players Podcast. So we were just talking off the air, Nate, and you just had your first baby.
We did. Yeah, we were pretty stoked to welcome her into the world. She was about 5 years in the making. It was a long road to get there. So when we finally met her, it was a lot of years, a lot of heartache, a lot of prayers all come true in this like little girl who's growing and happy and healthy. So it's been a blessing.
Yeah. And you were crazy enough to launch a company beta product right at the same time that you had a baby. Tell us about how that's been.
Yeah, so we kind of exited out of the beta phase, early access, into just open access to a lot of momentum, which is exactly what you want, putting a new product out into the world. And it was full bore father and founder life over the last week, 2 weeks. So it's been fun. I've been sprinting, so I'm looking forward to a little like breathe time this weekend. We're recording this on a Friday, so it'll be good. But Yeah, I guess they say good things come in pairs, and that's for sure been, the father founder life over here lately.
Yeah, I've got 2 kids myself, so I know that having kids, it forces you to plan your day for sure.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people ask me, like, "How do you balance it all?" I've got the podcast, I have a full-time job, I have 2 kids. How do you manage all of that at once? And what I found is kids can really help you figure out what your priorities are and what's most important and really boil it down to, like, I could write on a sticky note what I need to do today, work wise, in order to, make the appropriate time for kids and family. So I'm assuming everything's gone relatively. Sounds like everything's gone relatively smooth. Other than I know in the early days there's lack of sleep, and that's no fun. But it does go away. That's my message for anyone. My kids are older now, and we're past the late night phase.
Yeah, I will say that has been the most surprising piece is I was bracing for a much more rough transition
Yeah.
into fatherhood. And for years, I've been a bit of a chronic insomniac where I don't sleep a lot. And talking with my wife before our daughter came along, I was like, this is going to go one of two ways. Either it's
Yeah.
going to be really bad because I'm already in sleep debt, or the alternative is like my body's just gonna be like, what's new? I know what this is. And fortunately, it's been more of the second where my sleep quality, not quantity, but quality has actually improved, where I'm
Wow.
falling into deeper sleep faster. It's like it was like a hard reset somehow for my sleep patterns. So I'm probably like of the, very small minority out there who's like, yeah, having a newborn will help your sleep cycle. So that has also been unexpected but good news.
Yeah, that's really, really good to hear. So I want to just set the stage for how we got connected. And I reached out to you because someone forwarded me the enterprise sales playbook that your team put out. And I found the concepts in the playbook to be, dare I say, revolutionary. And it's stuff that I've heard for years, but I'd never really seen put in print. And that's the way
Mm,
I'll put it. It's things that managers, one of the truths that I've found in my selling career is that you'll get these audibles from a manager over the years, right? You'll have a really great manager that'll say something like, "Hey Jesse, you know that deals close when you're not in the room." And it's up to you as the seller to sort of internalize principles like that, right? And take those
mhm.
audibles and turn them into actionable things. And it was cool to see some of those audibles written about in a playbook that, again, I hadn't seen anything like that come from a vendor. I'd never seen that from a LinkedIn thought leader or anybody else. So it was really exciting to read through that. And I read through it word for word and, took the parts and said, "Hey, look, there's a lot of this that I'm already doing, but there's certainly things
Mhm.
that I'm not doing. And all of it's a good reminder for what we should be doing." So I was very excited to reach out and have you on the show. And I think a great place to start would be just tell us maybe first about your selling career. And then I want to get into how you came up with the idea for Fluent and where this comes from. You're obviously scratching your own itch, and I want to hear
Mhm.
where that came about. So take us back to your origins in sales.
Yeah, so my origin in sales starts at a different point than the typical AE's journey. I started by co-founding a company and realized pretty quickly, like, if we're not selling this product, then we don't get to continue building this product. And
Yeah.
so as I started to go deeper on kind of selling inside of that company, I realized there are a lot of parallels to the product work that I enjoyed, deeply understanding the job that somebody's trying to get done, what blockers are coming up, what's the vision for what they'll be able to achieve, how do we move them forward from this problem today to some type of payoff and future vision tomorrow. And so I just kind of started to fall in love with the both the art, but then also the science of sales, figuring out I kind of a fun fact, my spark type is a maven, somebody who just loves to learn. And for years I thought I was a maker, meaning I love to build things. And then my therapist helped me realize, like, no, Nate, you just like learning new things. So you put yourself in different environments. And there's always something to learn inside of
Yeah.
every deal cycle. And it's also what kind of drew me more toward enterprise and strategic selling. So after that company was acquired, inside of that next company, I built up its enterprise business unit. And that's where I started to go much deeper onto I would say planting some of the seeds of the current product that we're building at Fluent, though I couldn't have articulated that at the time.
Yeah.
We were working on deals where our reps, and this was the audible, the soundbite that you shared earlier,
Yeah.
is we were losing deals when we weren't in the room. And so after repeating some of the same issues, then later building a second enterprise sales team where we were selling to kind of Fortune 500 innovation teams, it was like deja vu, right? It was the same set of problems over and over. And so that's where I started to say, okay, that kind of the old product brain kicked in. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, how might we go about solving this? If it's our champions that are closing deals, not us, because we're not actually in the meeting when a decision is being made, it's going down during an internal conversation. It's all about us, but it's happening without us.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of started to form a point of view is to say, okay, if we can't be in the room, well, our writing can, our content can. And the
Right.
reps who are winning the most strategic deals most often at the highest contract values would go deep into not just writing, but co-writing or co-authoring a business case, an executive summary, kind of pick your favorite term there with their champion. And so the kind of genesis of the product, because I was also like at the same time, Jesse, I was like, do I really want to go back and build another company? Like it's hard
Yeah.
going back to the early stages of, an idea and a couple sketches in Figma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to buy something first, and I was going
Oh,
out
wow.
doing tons of demos with
Yeah.
different sales tech vendors, and everything kept coming back to the sales rep in the sales meeting, sales conversations, or something that was automated, quick, fast, easy to send out, basic marketing content that was templated, and it didn't look or feel like that champion. It was all written kind of up by my team and I very manually. So
Right.
that's where kind of I was like, all right, I think there's a true gap here. Went out, had more conversations on the product research side of things. And that's what convinced me to say, okay, something should exist. And then, the rest of the story is that something is now Fluint.
Wow. And not to give any press to competitors, but is there anybody else doing anything like this in the space? To my knowledge, there's not, but had there
Yeah.
been anybody attempting this before?
There's some kind of adjacent,
Yeah,
I call it categories. So
sure.
you have different folks who are thinking about like mutual action plans. Like let's work with the buying team to plan out the series of steps to complete a purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good. And I'm an advocate for that type of work, building mutual action plans. But if you talk to buyers, in the gap for us was much earlier in the sales cycle, where the champion couldn't get an executive, the rest of the team engaged on why would we even think about buying this? And so they were less like the how do we buy this, and the steps that comes afterward, but help me with the message and the words that I need to use internally first. That was the biggest gap in our pipeline where we would
Yeah.
lose most deals. And then kind of the other, call it adjacent, is there's kind of this generation of deal room software where, hey, we can take everything that was in an attachment in an email and we'll put it into a little like microsite or little landing page.
Yeah.
And so the reps who we're working with is, usually it's like that's fine in some deal cycles, but when I'm working with my champions, we need to build out more of an impact focused message versus just templated content about the product, unique to every account. So it's more account based. I'm having to write and create brand new content, not just reshare a branded link online. And so that's kind of the gap that we're sitting in.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely a hole to fill there in the marketplace. So yeah, let's hear a little bit about the product itself. I'd love for you to share just some of the feature highlights. How would a rep like myself, I'm an enterprise account executive, or
Mm-hmm.
even an SDR or somebody else within a sales organization, how could they use Fluint? What are some things to be thinking about as far as the features?
Yeah. So the way I would describe it is it's like a writing system in sales. So first discovery conversation all the way down through upsell. And the design of the platform is to help you generate each piece of account-based content, meaning
Mm-hmm.
it's very specific, it's unique to that account, whether it be things like a business case or executive summary, mid-funnel emails, internal notes to prep, for example, a sales engineer. Hey, we're designing this demo. What's the storyline that we want to tell? So every type of account-based content, in the way that the system works with you and with your champions, is by taking your buyer's language, looking at different sources like call transcripts, emails, notes, trying to isolate how does this team talk among themselves when they're internally? What's the choice of words and vocabulary that they use? and then pairing that with a framework to generate that particular piece of content, like an executive summary. So, we know a good exec summary, bold, compelling headline, series of sharp problem statements. Let's talk about if solved and the right way to do that. What's the outcome? Right. So kind of using their language to fill in that first draft and then allowing the rep to go back and forth in a shared space with their champion to develop it. So that system in a nutshell is Fluint.
Wow. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I'll share just from some of the most significant deals that I've done in my career. That's how it worked. Is the better that I could package up their own internal language, their own internal culture, as crazy as that sounds, is trying to really get as embedded into the company as I could. Those are the most significant deals I've closed in my career, was the ones where I was able to effectively do that. So having a tool to help enhance that is actually, and from my perspective, still unreal. I'm still wrapping my head around it, because this is all stuff that you just sort of have to use a lot of intuition, and you have to take it really slow and hope that your champion will let you into the tent in that way and allow you to have access to those things. And we'll share, openly the, I don't know, internal names of a project, or the internal stakeholders, or what the priorities are, or what the impact would be, or the risks are for the company. So those are things that you have to be thinking about, especially when you're closing a large enterprise deal. So it's really exciting to think that there's a product now that's going to help organize that in a way that's actionable.
Well, so for people who are listening to Jesse talk right now, he's dropping a couple pretty strategic points that I want to highlight, because it's a mark of a good and an experienced strategic seller. So you're using phrases like embedded within the buying team, my ticket into the tent. And those are things that not every rep develops. And the last piece that you touched on, kind of the third thing, is kind of related to discovery. So like a good working relationship with your champion in some of the design that we've kind of taken in mind is what you're producing should look and feel native, as if it was created inside of the buying team. And so you're operating as like an enablement team that is attached to that champion. Like you are their enablement team of one, creating things that will exist that they can go sell with internally. Like they're your inside sales rep. They're inside the tent, to your point. And so you're their enablement team, and your ticket into the tent to operate with your inside seller there is effective content that they're excited to use because it looks and feels and sounds like them. And then the other piece that you're mentioning is, it's like exciting stuff. It's the type of internal project, the code names that they're using to reference. What's the thing that my executive is all spun up on and is talking to our team about week in and week out? And when you break into that and you're starting to align with priorities, not just products as the main focus, man, you've unlocked some pretty cool momentum inside of that deal. So you dropped a couple like pretty good gems inside of that I just wanted to highlight there.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad coming from you, that means a lot. It sounds like I'm on the right track here. And now I just need to get a technology like Fluint in my workflow to help me organize it all. Cause historically it's just been a lot of Google Sheets and sticky notes and text message threads back and forth between myself and my champion. But again, I'm very excited to hear that there's a product in the market that's addressing that element to the art of selling, which is the part of selling that I don't think is going to get automated away anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. By the way, we can definitely make that happen. Access coming to you after this. But yeah, I mean, I agree. For example, I'll say one of the new group of users that we're onboarding, one of the largest names in sales that you'll recognize, and they're going to do kind of an announcement, so I won't spoil the news, but
sure,
they thousands of sellers, and they're operating on Word documents, Outlook, and OneNote, and that's it. That's the tech stack.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
So it hits home. It's for as crowded and as advanced as sales tech is, there's still definitely kind of a need. And of course, we work with teams who own every tool under the sun. They're on Gong and HighSpot and all of them, and we fill the gap in that tech stack too. But man, there's a lot of just kind of G Suite sellers out there too.
Yeah. Yeah, G Suite sellers. I like that.
Hmm.
That very much sums up my last 5 years was G Suite seller with lots of
Hmm.
Google Docs, lots of spreadsheets, and yeah, lots of intuition and stuff like that too, but nothing actionable.
Right.
So I was telling you before we hit record that one of the things that about your content, and I'm a subscriber on your newsletter. So I got an email a couple of days back about the importance of writing in sales, and you touched on it a minute ago too. And this is something that I've shared with my colleagues for years. So just a little bit of background. I studied journalism in college. So I was forced over and over again to perfect my writing as best as possible and to write pyramid style. If you're for any journalism majors out there, you'll know what pyramid style is, which is you don't want to bury the lead in a news story. So you want to try to lead with the most impactful statement first. And I guess it ultimately kind of looks like a pyramid. I don't even remember why that is now, but
The point is right up top.
the point is right up top. There it is. Okay. Yeah, that's the analogy. The point's up top like a pyramid. So I've taken that with me into my selling career. And a lot of times people have asked, hey, what do you think your superpower is in sales? And I've said, well, I've really put a lot into reading and writing and trying to write in a clear and concise way that I can convey a lot of information in a very short amount of text. And if I were to pinpoint, looking back at the last 10 years of my, tech selling career, that's what it comes down to is possibly I was able to do that better than peers, mostly because I happen to have studied journalism and I can still hear all my professors, slamming the desk and saying, you got to shorten this. There's too much fluff in here, pyramid style, et cetera, et cetera. So when I saw your email about some sales writing tips and the importance of good writing in, in helping to power these deals along, especially with an executive buyer, I was over the moon. So maybe you could share with listeners a couple of the tips from that newsletter, a couple of the things that you found can help improve your writing significantly as a seller.
Yeah, well, I'll go through them, and then your point there on some of the journalism classes reminded me of kind of a quick exchange that I had this morning on LinkedIn. I was writing about the link between writing in sales and discovery, and Corey Bray over at Coach CRM said, this reminds me of one of my college classes where we had to write a 250-word memo in response to a prompt, and half the class got 100, the other half got a 0. If you
Wow.
wrote 251 words or more, you got a 0. Everybody else, they got 100 on the exercise. And so his point was, now when I'm competing in deals against people who don't go deep on writing, and I can write a really sharp one-page memo, we win those deals all the time.
Yep.
And I read that and I was like, man, I should have been a journalism major. I should have ditched that finance degree, practice some more writing early on. But I'll say that is one of the points within this memo that I wrote on writing in sales that you're raising there. And one of the points in there is always try to shrink your writing to one page, because if you can't do that, then you don't know what you want to say, and that constraint just breeds clarity. It focuses your writing.
Yeah.
So I'm also happy to just kind of, it's pretty short and punchy. I can read all 10 if you're curious.
Yeah.
Just kind of talk to it.
Let's go through those. I think
Okay.
this is really valuable stuff. So I would love to
Yeah.
hear this.
Okay. Well, here's the full memo. The more you write, the more you'll sell. Writing packages your message so champions can deliver it during internal buying conversations when decisions are being made and you're not in the room. Here are 10 steps for writing well. Number 1, write how your buyers talk. Use their words. Number 2, start with a good framework. Then add in your buyer's words. Refer back to point 1. Number 3, narrative structures are better internal scripts for champions. Slides are awkward. Number 4, this is what I was just talking about. Shrink your writing to one page. If you can't, you don't yet know what you want to say. Number 5, noise is the enemy. Number 6, template emails and product decks are noise. Champions don't use them. See number 5. Number 7, cut out your branding. A trustworthy format is the customer's font on a white page. Number 8, ghost write. Make champions your authors and list their names on your docs. Number 9, your ROI is a maybe. The problem's cost is a fact. Always start with the facts. And number 10, write headlines customers will copy and paste into a board deck or press release. That's how
Oh
to write in
man.
sales.
Okay. I'm going to share this whole list, or, definitely plug for the newsletter, because this is just so good. I want to try to break down a couple of these just to go deep on a few. How would you suggest? I'm not going in any particular order here. So again, for the listeners, you'll have to go track down this list, get on Nate's newsletter, cut down your branding, or cut out your branding. A trustworthy format is the customer's font on a white page. So what you're saying there is, rather than send over your marketing team's standard customer facing deck, you would recreate one from the ground up that's custom to your buyer, that has their color hex codes and things like that in it, with their logo, formatted on, as simple as possible, a white page versus a big image rich slide deck. Am I understanding that one right? Okay.
That's right. That's right. For two reasons. One of the principles in there, noise is the enemy. Everybody's got a lot of clutter, a lot of stuff going on, and you're always fighting for attention and mind share within the buying process. So what is noise? It's something that's external. Like, we'll read an email from an internal domain far before another domain that we don't recognize. So especially if you want your writing to get passed around a buying team, make it look like it came from inside of that buying team. Cut out all of the external branding, in other words. And the other piece of this is, when you throw a heavy brand wash over all of your materials with your own brand, what are you signaling? This has some spin. This has some bias. It's from a single point of view. And so I'll weave the web here. I'll connect it back to one of the other principles on champions are your co-authors, write with them. That's going to be hard to do if it feels like, wow, this came from another company, because it's just all of their colors and fonts and customer logos and so on. So decrease noise, cut out all the branding. It's counterproductive, clean and simple, their font, white page.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's just not enough of that going on. Most people follow the straight line. Hey, this is the deck that I got when I started at the company, and it has our branding all over it and a bunch of cool screenshots of our product. They're not thinking about it from this perspective. So I just think, again, for anyone listening, this is a whole new way to approach closing deals. And if you want to close large size enterprise deals, this has to be done. It has to be custom. Another point. Go ahead.
And I'll just say quickly to that point, large size, the largest deal of my career, significant 7-figure deal. It was 2 pages on a Google Doc, 1 logo of the customer, nothing else, just words, black font, white page.
That's amazing. I love the simplicity, and it resonates. Nobody wants to feel your bias, like you said, that with all of the product branding from your product, and the focus isn't on the buyer as the hero also in the story. That makes the vendor the hero, or the software company the hero in this example. I love number 9. Your ROI is a maybe, their problems cost is a fact. Always start with the facts. Can you drill into that one a little bit for us?
Yeah. So anytime you present something in the future as a projection of ROI or the value that you'll create, it is a best guess. And best guess is always subject to a discount rate, or they are going to handicap what they believe could actually come true, especially if you're talking with any type of finance persona, a CFO. What do? They think in terms of probabilities, and they know that a future estimate is never sitting at 100% forecast probability, the likelihood of that coming true, likelihood. However, you look at what has already happened, which is the cost of a problem. You can use the customer's own data to say, look, we know exactly what this is costing. Therefore, we're very confident that if we don't do anything, this will continue on, or it'll get worse. That is a prediction that is more likely to hold some weight. And so what you're doing is you're starting with something that is true. Always lead with the truth. Then you're creating context for, well, the value in the future that we could create. Why is this meaningful? And it's the contrast. It's the difference between, this is what we're losing today. This is what we could get tomorrow. The larger the gap between those two things, the more value that you're creating inside of the deal. But that's only perceived if you start with the fact, which is the cost, and then you talk about the future, the ROI.
I wanted to share a tool that I started using recently. And if you're doing any prospecting or lead sourcing from LinkedIn, it's definitely worth checking out. The tool is called Surf, and it's spelled SURFE. It's a Chrome extension that allows you to add contacts to your CRM directly from LinkedIn. I use it to add contacts quickly, follow my deals, keep track of my notes, and it's actually saved me a bunch of time. The data is always 100% accurate because I don't have to copy and paste each detail from each contact over to my CRM. Instead, Surf does it all for me automatically with just one click. Now, the folks over at Surf have been kind enough to put together a promo offer for fans of SSP. You can go to the link in the show notes and use the promo code JWSURF with an E 5 for a 5% discount on your first year. Check out the link in the show notes and go check them out. Wow. No, that's a really helpful way to approach that and think about it. It's totally, sadly, not what gets coached a lot also in sales teams. The coaching is to not necessarily focus on the facts. It's focus on extrapolation or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's solid gold right there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I'll just say I was talking with an enterprise AE yesterday who was like, COI is my friend, i.e. cost of inaction. COI is my friend, ROI is my enemy, ROI. And I was like, oh, that's a good little mnemonic device to remember that. So COI is your friend, ROI is your enemy. I wouldn't go so far as to say your enemy. You need them both. They work together,
Right.
but definitely COI is your friend early.
Yeah. No, I like that. So the last one here that I really like is write headlines customers will copy and paste into a board deck or press release. I've had that happen before and I closed the deal. So I can, personally attest to when your champion and your executive buyers start copying over things that you create and putting those into their own internal decks, whether that's internal company team stuff, or if it's internal to external, they're putting it in front of their investors or their board of directors. That's when you're onto something. And so I had a deal about 2 years ago where like pretty much everything I would create for this deal, the champion would call me up on like a Friday afternoon and say, can you jump on a Zoom call? I just want to show you what I'm putting together for my internal presentation. And we would spend like probably an hour. It was a significant deal, and it was a household name logo. So it was a really exciting one. So it was worth the time, but I would spend maybe an hour and a half with her on a Friday afternoon, just reviewing the deck that she was building for her internal presentations on how to implement our solution. And so she would take, headlines. She would take graphics that we had put together showing what their experience would look like. And it was just very predictable from that point on. I just knew, I was like, we're not spending this many hours together for this not to close. This is a real project. There's a real committee that's reviewing this. I know all about it because I'm basically her assistant in this project, right? Like I was there to help her make sure the deck looked aesthetically pleasing and that it had all the right content and that it was accurate and that she was prepared to go and present to this internal buying committee. And so I think that point in the writing aspect really nails it, that as soon as you start to hear things that you've created are coming out in other meetings internally or externally, you're onto something.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you can shape the sentences the team uses to talk about a project, you can also begin to influence and shape their thinking on what's the right direction to go. And that's the beauty of co-authoring, was exactly what you were doing. You were building together. And the other point that you brought up that's a really fun thing is, as you go through this process together, as you're selling with her, you're like her enablement team, right? You were creating content that she was then using to sell internally. What you're also doing is you're allowing her to build a large sense of ownership in the project, because we all take a stake in the things that we create. She was creating right there with you. And it reminds me of a quote that one of our champions for a deal that we did with one of the top 5 retailers, toward the kind of later stages in the cycle, she goes, if this doesn't go through, I will quit my job. And she was dead serious. She had built such an attachment to the project, not just the product, but everything wrapped around it that was going to come with it that we were working on together. And she was like, if this does not go through, I will quit my job. And I was like, that is the type of champion that you want going in to sell when you're not there.
That is a hell of an endorsement. Wow. Well, tell us what are some things that So lately on the show, I've been talking a lot about how to close your first significant deal in your career. A lot of my
Mhm.
listeners are still early in their SaaS sales journey and looking to close their first 6 or 7 figure annual SaaS deal.
Mhm.
It sounds like you've had a lot of experience working with large enterprise customers. Tell us some things, maybe 1 or 2 things that someone who's out there listening today can think about to help get them closer to that goal of closing their first significant brand or deal size.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I would say is if you talk with somebody who has been selling kind of larger 6, 7+ figure deals. By the way, shout out to my friend Jamal. I see his book Mega Deal Secrets on
Yeah.
your shelf in the background there. So 8 figure, deals in that case. The thing that they will tell you that somebody who hasn't sold a larger deal is that it's not actually about the deal size that makes things challenging. It's about the number of contacts. And that's what drives the complexity in an enterprise or a strategic sale. So put the deal value aside and just think about the number of people that you need to create consensus with. And the
Mhm.
reason is that that's where you get all kinds of conflicting opinions, folks with different priorities, sets of metrics, especially when you're selling across business unit or P&L lines. People are evaluated and compensated differently. And then you're
Yeah.
trying to get them all together to agree on something and to move in a new direction. So that is the challenge in a more complex deal. And the way to operate in light of that is to think about your account planning as designing the flow of internal communications that's going to go down inside of the buying team. And so it's for you to design how people talk internally about a certain project, how to frame it in a way that aligns with all of those interests, and then to help develop some of the content that your first champions can go out and sell with. So that
Mhm.
would be the first mindset shift that I would encourage folks to make. The second one that I would think about is it is really hard after years and years of having efficiency and activity drilled into you to allow yourself the time to slow down, think at a more thoughtful level. What is it that I actually want to show up and communicate? Where are these people coming from? And it will take a lot of time at first. You will probably spend, for example, you may block out a day and have 0 meetings, and you are just writing and rewriting an executive summary to get ready for a significant meeting with a key account. And at first, I promise you, you will be so anxious and like,
Yep.
this is a waste of an entire day. I need to log some activity. I just need to make some random cold calls to feel like I'm doing something. But give yourself the space and the freedom to just think about quality and impact first, no matter what time it takes. Once you're operating at a level of like, wow, I'm really proud of what I've written up with this champion. Your point earlier, I was spending 90 minutes on a Friday afternoon just sitting and talking about a couple slides for one
Yep.
account. That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's good. And I would say
Yeah.
that is good, and that's the way. So two I guess ways to reframe thinking if you're just starting to do some more complex selling.
I had not thought to articulate that ever, but that is so true that in the transition in my career from sort of SMB or commercial deals into larger enterprise deals, it is very uncomfortable because you're programmed to think, no, I should be making cold calls right now, or I should be volume blasting emails or whatever, versus like, yeah, spending 2 hours sitting with somebody prepping for a custom demo or prepping for some sort of internal conversation. So it's a huge
Mhm.
mindset shift. I've had a few folks. You mentioned Jamal Reimer earlier. Jamal was on the show, and that was a topic of conversation that we had. Also, Brandon Fluharty. I've had him on the pod also,
Yeah, another good
and
friend. Yeah.
he's a big advocate of like you should be writing. I think his claim to fame is he wrote this brief, or it was a like a letter. It was an open letter to an airline brand that he was a customer for, and that opened the door to their executive team, which helped him close one of the largest deals of his career. And so I've internalized that, and I've found that that is so true, that if you focus on the creative aspects of doing these types of deals
Mhm.
and you kind of tune out some of the just mindless activity, and it's not all mindless. You have to still do prospecting activities, but when you've got the right project in the queue and you've got someone who's an ICP buyer that has, an active initiative and there's a shot at it, you want to make sure you invest the right amount of
Mhm.
creativity into the deal, frankly, and the right amount of strategy, not just the tactical stuff. So
Right.
I'm glad you spoke to that, because I don't know that enough people talk about that out loud.
Yeah, and I would say that was how we became friends, because we were both writing on writing and sales, creating a narrative structure for a good memo. And we were like, yeah, you get it. Like, you don't think I'm crazy. And he's like, you don't think I'm crazy. I'm like, let's talk about this. And it is a pretty cool story, by the way. It was an open letter to the executives at American Airlines, which was a pretty sweet story to see how that one came
Yeah.
about. And just a good example of, like, especially when you put some time and creativity, and if you are so fortunate enough to be able to work with a brand that you actually use and buy from and you enjoy, it's fun, man. You
Yeah.
enjoy spending that amount of time in selling. And I'll give maybe folks a visual on that shift. Is when I was selling SMB, before I went out and built this first enterprise business unit after our past startup was acquired. So I was traveling every week. That company was based in Washington, D.C. I was living in Chicago at the time. And so I remember trying to help out the SMB team with deals. I would be sitting in the back of an Uber with my laptop open and a hotspot on, trying to like furiously get through emails and type things away, right?
Yeah.
So fast forward a year later, working and traveling for key accounts in an Uber, I'm sitting there in silence, just thinking, trying to form a point of view on a different way that we could approach something instead of this like mad dash. There was never a minute when my laptop wasn't open. I'm just like sitting, thinking. And
Yeah.
that's part of the shift to doing more strategic deals.
And by the way, that's where this industry gets really fun for anyone out there who's listening. And maybe I know I've talked to a lot of younger sellers, or I should say earlier career sellers. And they say, when does it stop being just such a frenzy, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
to your point, like back of the Uber, trying to get a hotspot connection so you can blast out a bunch of emails. And this is when it does get really fun. This is when the career you become more like a consultant than like, a sales rep or a call center agent or something like that. You become someone who's a strategic partner and an advisor, a consultant, whatever word you want to use. And this is when the job gets really fun. And frankly, it's when it gets a lot more lucrative too, is when you can start to think about things in a new way, and you can really start to solve real problems for real companies. And in some cases, those companies will be products that sit on your shelf at home in some way, or services you use like American Airlines. So yeah, love the insight and appreciate you sharing all that. I want to help my listeners get in touch with you and your team. How can fans go about finding you and checking out Fluint?
Yeah, the best way, and you mentioned it earlier, so thank you for that, is checking out our newsletter. I do all of our writing on our blog, and then I send that out every other week in our newsletter. So it's just fluint.io/newsletter, fluint.io/newsletter.
Awesome. I'm going to paste a link to that in the show notes, the episode notes for this episode. Nate, this was it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and an amazing conversation. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the audience?
Last words of wisdom. Well, I'll give you a short story. It relates to the theme of writing and sales, and then this topic that we were on and making the shift. So legend has it, a woman walks up to Pablo Picasso sitting in a cafe, and she says, Mr. Picasso, I'd love for you to draw me a work of art. You can do it on this napkin here, and I'll pay you whatever you believe it's worth. And he says, okay. So he takes 30 seconds. He creates a sketch on the napkin, hands it back to her. And says, that'll be $15,000. And she's like, what? But that took you 30 seconds. And he's like, oh no, my dear, that took me 40 years. And so the point is that to do something with high quality and speed, it takes some time. And so give yourself grace if you've heard some things today that you want to try, and it's not coming as fast or as naturally as you would like. Picasso was known from age 20 to age 90. He created one new piece of art every single day. So just try, practice, give yourself some time, get to a standard of quality that you're really excited by. And then, you can go fast afterward. It'll come with time.
Amazing example. I don't even know what to say to that. That was just the perfect way to summarize that, and a good message for everyone out there, because I think we forget sometimes that it's not something that comes easy or quick. It's something that comes with repetition, time, and experience.
Right on. Right on. Well, Jesse, thank you again for having me, man. I really enjoyed it.